All right, welcome family, once again to another episode of the Waking Giant podcast show, TWG, Waking Giant magazine for the Phoenix Local Organizing Committee for Justice or Else. I always like to add that part, Justice or Else. I am your host, Brother Jay, the head minister of the Ministry of Information, and today I have a special guest, Mr. James Sesay Jr. Is okay if I throw the junior in there, sir?
That's no problem. I'll be honored.
All right. So, it's God. This is my special guest today, family. I want you all to give him a digital round of applause for showing up tonight. Thank you very much for your time, brother, for coming on. So, as I said, I introduced you, James Sesay Jr. Won't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the family? Let everybody know who you are, where you're from, and what you do, my brother.
It's an honor to be on this platform, brother. I really appreciate what you're doing and having these moments where you highlight different brothers in the community. That way, it can inspire and shed some light on some things that's really going on in our surrounding area. My story is no different really from anybody else's, but to be clear, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the child of immigrants. Both my mother and father are from Sierra Leone, West Africa. I'm the first generation born in the States. So I understand what it's like growing up with children of the diaspora and also with a family that's rooted back home who completely understand their culture and they have a different view of how things are actually here in this country. I have both my parents. My father was a great influence in my life, which is why now I'm active in the community, being a mentor and a role model for other young men because I understand the importance of having a positive male role model in your life. When I was graduated from high school, I decided to go into the Marine Corps because I wanted to explore a career in journalism. So I wanted to be a combat journalist, when I was young. And I remember someone told me, well, if you want to get into CNN, you want to make sure that you get an edge because it's difficult for Black men to get into CNN. And one of those advantages is if you have some type of military experience, like a combat journalist, well, you have a shoe in. So I'm like, okay, bet, that's what we're going to do. And then I remember somebody told me that if you're going to do it, well, you want to try to do the Army because that's the easiest because you're not built to be a Marine. And, the way I'm wired, you tell me I can't do something and, I'm going to go out of my way to prove you wrong. So
challenge.
Yeah, I don't, I don't take challenges very well. And I don't like it when someone tells me that I can't. So, I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. I served honorably. I got out as a sergeant. And it's something that I did. I'm not necessarily proud of it. If you ask me, or if you better yet ask my sons what my views are on it, I will not co-sign nor bless them joining the armed forces whatsoever. Once I had the experience being in it for 5 years and being a sergeant, I realized that is not a place for us, especially with the current situation, for any Black person to put themselves on the line for and give their life and sacrifice for under their current circumstances.
So as the child of immigrants, brother, because that's new information for me. So have you been back home? Have you been back to the continent? Have you spent any time back there?
Well, I spent time there when I was very young. You're talking about when I was about, 7 or 8 years old. So it's not anything that has a long-standing impact on my life. And that was just for a summer, right? So, yeah, I don't have the accent. My own family makes fun of me. You know what I mean? They call me an American boy. You know what I mean? I understand the language, I understand the culture, but I haven't been back home. Right. Because once I got situated here in Arizona and I was stationed down in Yuma, I went to ASU thereafter. And then shortly after, I settled down. I have my family. I've been married to my wife for 16 years. We had our 16-year anniversary on July 4th.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have 4 beautiful children. All of our children have graduated. My daughter is going to NAU this fall. My eldest daughter went to ASU, and my boys, one is a roofer, and the other is still trying to figure out what he's trying to do with his life.
And that's all right.
So,
that's okay.
You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. I'm no different from anybody else. You know, I have good points, I have bad points. But as far as my impact and contribution to the community has to deal with what I do with the mentorship with Fight for Life, No Excuses, and more specifically, my role with martial arts training. So I've been doing martial arts since I was in high school. You know, I grew up in Atlanta where we didn't have gangs, right? We didn't have Crips and Bloods,
right?
But you had to square up with your hands on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we didn't pull out guns. That was the cheating way. Right. We handled our business with our hands.
Right.
So learning how to scrap.
You from the old school, just like
learning how to scrap was a big deal, man to man, and it taught you how to be humble. It taught you how to make sure that you were respectful, and you gave dignity to everybody, because at any given moment you could catch these hands, right?
You can get. I did want to touch on something, man, that you talked about,
sure.
Which really intrigues me. Not grown up with my father, especially my blood father. My mother was married to a guy for a certain period of my life, from childhood to late teens.
Right.
And then they divorced, but not having that male. He was there, but he wasn't quite there. You know what I mean? He was just, he went to work, and that was pretty much it. So, right. And there was no establishment of a relationship. So that's something that as a father myself, at this time, I'm always intrigued about a brother or sister, but a brother in particular who's had that good, tight relationship with his dad, because you can see it in just how you carry yourself, just in your life in particular. He must have had a strong man in his life, who gave him direction, who gave him some game, because your mind is too level, you know what I'm saying, to just, you can just tell the difference. Like you said, we're just different. All of us.
Sure.
Different experience. So explain a little bit for that, about, your relationship with your dad, how it's influenced your life, man, and then go back into what you're doing for the community. I just wanted to backtrack a little bit on that.
No, absolutely. I had a very, 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 very close relationship with my father. Leaving everything bare, actually, my relationship and my family structure was a little bit different, because, during my childhood, my mother, which I have a wonderful relationship now, I speak to her like every other day. She calls me all the time. But while I was growing up, my mom was suffering from alcoholism, and, she wasn't as present mentally, and she couldn't show me the beautiful woman that she actually was when I was in my adolescence, right? My father was that role model that spoke to me on a regular basis. I'm West African, so we have a lot of family in New York, in Newark, in DC, North Carolina. We traveled every single summer. And my father and I did road trips, just him and I, that was it. And, we talked and talked and talked and talked. Low key, he was trying to groom me to be a lawyer or a debater, because he was on a debate team and he studied pre-law. So that was his thing. He was trying to mold me to be a lawyer. So he was always checking me on my on my sources, whether or not I vetted. If I'm going to say something, well, cite your sources, son. Where'd you get that from, right? So it's the challenging and constantly stretching who you think you're supposed to be in this role, and having that constant example, and also just having like a big brother, big uncle that is not going to fluff you and is always going to hold you accountable. Sometimes it could be a love-hate relationship, because there's no one harder on you than your father, right?
I was going to ask about that.
My pops didn't pull. My pops did not pull any punches.
Okay.
All right, and I mean that literally.
Right.
All right, because there were some times.
Right.
That I thought I was feeling myself, and I got a little chin check. right? So it's that, but you realize that whether, and I'm not co-signing any type of, hands on your child, because, my wife would tell you, and my kids would tell you that they would prefer to get their behinds whooped than go to one of my lectures, right?
Mine too.
So I'll rather sit you down and talk your ear off,
right.
and walk you through the steps of your mistake before I put my hands on you, right? So I have a completely different leadership and parenting style than my father. However, the relationship and bond that I established with my father definitely gave me the mental fortitude to accomplish anything that I wanted to do, right? I saw that man wake up every single day at 4:30 in the morning and get up and do his own business. I've never seen him work for anybody else in my life. He's always been an entrepreneur. He's straight African, like a Jamaican. He had like 15 jobs.
Straight hustler.
Yeah, his own thing, right? So he was a refinisher for over 25 years. So he'll go into residential homes, complexes, and restore your bath fixtures, like your tub, your bath sink, your countertop, your cabinets. And he taught me a trade. I mean, I was right there with him, 8 years old, holding the tool chest, like helping him sand down the countertops, put on the mask, I'm spraying. And he gave me tools that I'll always be grateful for. And because I had that behind me, I know that if worse comes to worse, I could fall back on that. It gave me the freedom to explore what I truly wanted to do. Right? So many times we are forced to do certain things that we may not necessarily want to do, that don't necessarily fulfill us, but we do that because we are desperate, or there's a fear for survival, because we don't have the trade to be able to make money with our hands.
Right. And that's valuable too, because, the guy that was at the house for a while, he worked with his hands, but he never took the time to like say, hey man, let me show you what I'm doing.
Right.
So you can, learn how to do this and learn how to do that. My mother would have to kind of force me out there, and then it was still, I'm just kind of standing around watching him with his, him and his brothers drink beer and talk smack.
Right.
It was country boys,
Right.
I'm from New York, so we was up in the Bronx,
Right.
that's what they did on Saturday afternoons. His brothers would hang out and fix their cars and stuff. So,
right.
So I never got that. So I see, just listening to that, man, I see why, first of all, you've taken so much to, dealing with the young boys, and getting involved in this type of, this type of activity. But I can see within myself, just being transparent, where there's certain things that I lack because I didn't, have that, what I'm saying, that kind of relationship, with any man in my life, what I'm saying, like from my entire life, what I mean? And I'm hitting middle age pretty soon, so it's like I never had that. So what I had to do was, and my sons now one is he just finished his first year at NAU. He had to come back, and he's studying pre-med.
Okay.
And my youngest son, he just graduated high school, so we're trying to get him in. He plays basketball, so we're trying to get him in a school.
Right.
And so my relationship with them is more so I'm finding myself giving just game. Like everything that I've learned, all the mistakes I've made over the last 20 plus years, I'm saying, hey, look, this is not what you want to do. So I'm finding myself doing that. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to, the road trip thing sounds good, but that's something I've never been like, you know what I'm saying, inspired to do, even though I've thought about it, where we can develop, a different type of relationship. So it kind of complicates things when you don't have that example, you know what I mean? So, and it's a confidence thing too, because I see where I had to build my own confidence. And just listening to your story, and this is good for the community to hear, you know what I'm saying? It's good for young brothers to hear this type of conversation. I've had to learn how to build confidence in myself, you know what I'm saying, to do anything, to have a relationship with my wife, to raise our 4 children, to get up every day and go to work, but also to find a way to expand myself and say, I need to tap into me to develop myself to do what I really want.
Yes, yes, yes.
Implementation is cool. You know, I could do the school thing. I'm a reader and I'm a writer. I do that. You know what I'm saying? But I've never been inspired by school, but I'm inspired by telling stories. I'm inspired by doing other things. So I had to once again go back in. I didn't have anyone to lean on and say, hey man, what you think about this? You know what I'm saying? Like to throw stuff against the wall.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And hope something sticks and something that resonates with myself. And that's how I kind of operate, you know, as well as developing a spiritual side where I say, okay, I don't have this earthly father, but I do have God in me that's going to guide me in the way that I'm supposed to go and put the words in my mouth, you know, to tell my kids, you know what I'm saying? And put me, I've had to go through these experiences just so I can have something to teach them, you know, to enrich their lives. And I get compliments all the time on how just, you know, good my kids are, you know what I'm saying? Nobody's perfect, but you know what I'm saying? My kids are not in trouble, you know, they work hard, you know, you're talking A students, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, and these, you know, they just do what they do because I'm here. And
there you go.
My son told me that, my oldest son, he's like, hey man, you know, I got you, you know, you here, you know what I'm saying? You here for me, you know what I'm saying? So that I was like, okay, so I must be doing something. So
yes,
as a father, and then we'll get to the program. I just had to put that out there because I think for the audience, you know, as men, we have to show other sides of ourselves as well too. You know what I mean? And we can be vulnerable, you know what I'm saying, and have these type of conversations where we're talking about the things that influence us and make us who we are.
Right.
And that's what influences my art, my life.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, and my spirituality, my life. You know what I'm saying? That's where it comes from. It doesn't come from anything else but my life. You know what I'm saying? And I recognize the good and the bad, and I see God everywhere. So that's how I survive. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I call myself the priest scholar, because you know what I'm saying, I had to develop that, as well as I told brothers before, being married, man, is really that's the university right there, man. You know, you get your marriage right, and we're 22 years. You know, and our anniversary was back in April. You know, and we're, you know, we're 27 together. So it's no, 23 years. Ooh, 23 years. We're 27 together, and that's been probably the most learning I think any man can do. You know, and I think to even reach a certain level of spirituality, you need to be married, man, because you have to understand how to take care of something way outside of yourself.
Yes. We'll touch on that in a minute too. We'll touch on that.
Yeah, we'll go there too. But I just wanted to, you know, understand, you know, just put it out there too, man, that, you know, we have to get back to the family thing.
I agree.
And part of, I think, the beauty of, you know, my wife and I, when we started, we was kids, man, you know, teenagers in the early 20s, you know, having babies and trying to, you know, find ourselves, you know, at the same time, you know, to where we are now to outlast. You know what I'm saying? So people and it doesn't seem like we put in as much effort as we probably really have. You know, it almost seems like, and you trust me, we go through our moments like everyone else.
Of course.
But when you get to the end of it, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, you realize that was for my growth. That was for my betterment. You know what I'm saying? And you step out, when you learn to step outside of yourself, brother, you know, as a man, you say, you see the value in your woman when it's the most uncomfortable. I hope that makes sense. You know what I mean? When you're in the most uncomfortable state, you know, and that's when we lash out as men, right? We get frustrated.
A lot of us are programmed to do that, brother.
Sir, she's on top of me. You're nagging me. You bother me. Yeah, just leave me alone. You're pestering me. No. Once I learned that was her way of saying, hey, I need you to step up. Hey, I need you to step up. You know, and it shouldn't matter how it comes out.
I agree.
you receive the message.
I agree.
But our pride and our ego gets in the way. So yeah, we've been groomed to do that, man. So I just had to put that out there, brothers.
No, man, like, you know what?
Yeah.
Your divinity was speaking through you at this moment, brother. So, it was a pleasure to get to understand who you are on a more intimate level. Now I understand why you're doing what you're doing a little bit better. And let me just share this with you, brother, because you wanted to get my perspective as being a Black man who had the blessing of having not just a father who was present, but a good father, one who I normally give credit to for me being equipped to handle a lot of different things. I would say this, if you were to weigh and put value on two different individuals, and one had to explore a jungle and the other had to explore the jungle, but this person had a path and a map that was already laid out that, hey, here's quicksand, here's a vine you could use, and you want to avoid these snakes. And they had a how to get from point A to point B, and they make it to the destination. Okay, that's cool. Versus the person who had to be the pioneer and discover for himself how to get from point A to point B on his own. Which do you give more value in their effort? And that's what I want you to consider when brothers like yourself, who may not necessarily have an example of having a father who was active in that way, but yet you find a way to pioneer and have people compliment you about your children, to have your children put that into action by having good grades and doing what they need to do, for your own children to acknowledge that you were the person responsible for that. Brother, if any, I'm telling you from a person who has the standard of what a good father is, you are a good father. And you do not, and I think, here's something that I think needs to be addressed. I think a lot of brothers feel that maybe perhaps they can't be a good father because they didn't have an example, right? Like, well, how can I be a good father if I didn't have an example? No. If anything, you don't have any bad habits to pass on to your child, you see. Many of us are living in some type of cycle because it's hard for us to differentiate between what are the good things to pass on to your child versus the bad things to pass on to your child. Because we realize that, well, if it worked on me, I'm going to use the exact same process on my child. And it's challenging for us to adapt and know the difference, right? By the time we have that wisdom, maybe we're in our 30s or our 40s, but many of us are having children in our early 20s, mid 20s. And we still, that when you were like 20-something, you didn't know nothing, right? So can you imagine you trying to raise another child when you don't have wisdom? You may have some knowledge, but you have no wisdom. So to be in a position where you were able to pioneer and with intent and the wherewithal that I need to develop myself so I have something to give back, well, brother, you got to figure it out, because the one thing that a father needs to do for his children is to provide an example and to teach a skill, something, right? They need to be able to teach you something. Whether I teach my boys how to go out there and do landscaping with me for clients so they see what the expectations are for a client when you do their yard, not because I do landscaping. I have like 20 different hustles because I never know when I might cuss out my boss, to be honest with you. I might wake up one day and tell him that's it. So I need to have multiple hustles on deck, ready to go to make sure that I'm able to take care of my family. My boys had to go with me when they were young. They had to learn how to do landscaping. They had to learn how to do these different things with me so that, yes, I want them to go to college. Yes, I want them to find their own path. I want them to do whatever they feel is happy. But if worse comes to worse, I don't have to worry about my child being a transient. I don't have to worry about them doing something that they don't want to do because they're in a desperate situation, and they lose their dignity of self. So these little small things that you're doing for your children is commendable. Now I'll touch on the whole thing about marriage. There is nothing that can make a Black man, or any man for that matter, but especially Black men, especially in this country with all of the trauma and the experiences that we have to deal with. Nothing allows a Black man to fully grow into what he needs to be than a Black woman that has committed to him and that he has committed to her. I cannot state that anymore of the importance of making sure that your love situation, your family situation, your unit, your partnership with your life partner, when that is settled, you're able to grow. Scientifically, we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? On how the human mind develops and aspires. We're talking about the pyramid that you see on the dollar in the enlightened mind. I don't want to get too deep into the rabbit hole right now, but let's just go over the basics of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So the bottom layer of the pyramid is food and water, right? You need, as a human being, your mindset for survival is to ensure that you have food and water first, then it's shelter/security, right? Once you have food and water, you want to make sure that you're able to have a safe place to store and to continue on the process of having food and water. Then after that, it's family. After you have food and water and shelter, your responsibility is to establish family, whether or not that's with your mother, your siblings, your father. That family unit and you being an active force in that role allows you the bandwidth to find love. And then when you have love and you have commitment and you have a unit with your life partner, now you're able to focus on what's really critical, self-development. Most people cannot focus on self-development entirely if they don't have that person settled. Right? We rushing and try to find who we need to be our mate with. Matter of fact, 90% of most people's lives is trying to find that mate. But if that's settled, imagine all the resources and time and energy you can spend on really just developing yourself. And then when you develop yourself, the last thing on that pyramid is enlightenment. You begin to be self-empowered. You begin to think outside the box. You begin to look at your terrarium and say, wait a minute, I'm in this cage and I don't belong here. You begin to question. You begin to stretch the elasticity of what you can be. And you realize what your real role and place is in this society. And you're not just living for you. You start to live for the people. You start to live for the village. You start to do more. You start to put in works. And you become a great individual because at the root, you had your life partner situation squared away. So a Black man can't be his full self without a Black woman, you see.
I agree, man. And you know what? It even took me a moment to get to that point where I had to realize that. You know what I mean? And that's when you get to the next level. You know what I mean? And, you know, that's the unfolding that has to take place. And man, that was just a cold breakdown right there, man, because I could see the top of Maslow's triangle.
Right.
That's where the magic happens. You know what I mean? That's where full self-actualization begins to take place.
Exactly.
And that's where I'm at. Right there.
Well, and I applaud you. You on the way, brother. You're definitely on the way.
It's a great feeling, man. It's a great feeling. So with that in mind, let's talk about your program. Let's talk about what you're doing with the young brothers out there, man.
Okay, yeah. So, you know, the program that I invest my time in is Fight for Life, No Excuses. You know, I was working with Sister Fatima Halim with the Sons program.
Yeah, familiar with the sister, yeah.
Yeah, so she's been doing it in the Valley for over 30 years, and she definitely needs credit on where credit is due. And, you know, I actually put my daughter into her program for the Blueprint for Womanhood. And we realized that she had a son's program that needed more support from brothers. And Brother Kadir, Bilal, and I stepped up to the plate to continue the process of keeping the son's program going for a number of years. And then Sister Fatima had confidence in passing on the torch of the Sons program and putting all that effort and energy into making Fight for Life No Excuses a two-part mentorship, a program that has traditional mentorship throughout the year where we pair these young men with one of their brothers, right? So there's several different mentors on the program. We all have fingerprint clearance. We've all been vetted. We all have a system that we use to help these young men out. But we all have different talents and different skill sets and different things that we do. Some young men hang with me. Some young men hang out with Brother Anthony, or maybe Brother Bilal, Brother Javion, or Brother Kadir. But near the end of the year, from September to December rather, we have an organized manhood training program. That's a cornerstone of the Fight for Life program, where we have individuals fly in from all over. Most of them local. Sometimes we'll have like the Black Fire Department Union come out and speak to these young men. We have Brother Keith teach them the history of African drumming. We have Brother Lasana Hotep fly in from Cali and talk to them about the importance of African history and knowing thyself, how you label yourself. We'll have brothers from the ACLU talking to them about understanding your rights and what you can do and what you should do when you interact with law enforcement. We have them engaged with different brothers in the college platform, where we're trying to prepare them for college if that's the path they choose to take. We have them meet different brothers in the community that are entrepreneurs, that are telling them about, okay, this is what it takes to start your own business. This is the mindset you need to have. We flood them with a lot of different experiences, and Black men in particular, so they can see them in different lights. And then we have the programs, right? In addition to the guest speakers, we have our own central programs. Now, for our younger warriors, what we do is we work with them on tutoring. We want to make sure their reading level is up. We want to make sure their basic math is up. We make sure that each one of these young men have the ability to speak in front of their peers. Whether they have difficulty with reading or not, you're going to learn to be confident and speak in front of a number of people. To be able to think and articulate your point and know that it's okay to have pauses. It's okay to think before you speak. And it doesn't matter how long the speech is. What matters is that you say what you need to say with intention. The programs specifically are broken to the STEM program, where we cover all the basics of science, technology, engineering, and math. Brother Brian heads that up, and we're trying to introduce the kids into robotics, about learning about circuitry, understanding that math and coding is something that can set them up for the future. We were wise enough to identify that not all young men are driven to that path. So we have opened up a program for entrepreneurship. So for those young men who are pioneers, who want to start their own business and figure out what that looks like, we've established a program where last year we walked these young men through establishing their own brand, coming up with the design. They learn how to do price costing. They found the materials. We got a screen printing machine. They did the press. They figure out, okay, this is how much we need to charge it for. We role play. We say, this is how you're going to sell it to the public. This is how you're going to market it in advance. And this is how you're going to present it when you go to the Arkwood Exchange, the Buy Black marketplace. And this is how you're going to explain why your product has value. And they were able to walk away with a profit and be proud of themselves. And we have those hoodies available on our website that I'll talk about later. That it's an alumni thing that each class later on will be able to say, okay, we're going to do the next big thing. It doesn't have to be clothing next time. It could be something entirely different. So that's that own program. And now what we're doing is we're expanding the program. We want to make sure that young men are able to choose their own path when they get in our program or what they want to develop. So we're opening up a film and arts division that is going to incorporate the use of professional film equipment, where we teach them how to do a short documentary during the life of the program, and or doing time at a radio broadcasting center with the Phoenix Center of Arts. where we have a brother that has a platform available where the young men can put in hours in a radio booth so they can learn how to be a radio personality and start their own radio station.
Absolutely.
Because as the minister of information, you know how critical it is for us to control the narrative and for us to be able to put our own spin on how we perceive things in this world. So these are the different platforms that we are promoting right now, and we have a lot of different ideas. We want to take the limitations of us only being able to work within the Phoenix metro market and scale outwards by having mentorship on a Zoom conference, have tutoring on a platform like Khan Academy, where we could come up with a curriculum and we could help young Black men, no matter where you happen to live at, and walk you through this agenda where we're helping you understand the material because we care about your interests, as opposed to a teacher who's not really worried about you because you just happen to fit a quota at a charter school. Right. So we're tackling a lot of different things. Now, what I happen to do, the last program, I may be a little bit biased, but my job is to make sure they have the mental fortitude to learn how to breathe, learn how to manage stress, to have mental health by doing Tai Chi, Qigong. We do Kemetic yoga, and I teach them self-defense. So Kung Fu training is a part of the curriculum. Yoga is a part of the curriculum, and stress management is definitely a part of the curriculum, because each time they go into formal education centers, people are just waiting for them to be the stereotypical brother who's going to lose control, even though there are buttons that they are pushing constantly to try to get a rise out of them. I'm teaching them to always be in control and never allow somebody to get you out of pocket.
Now let's touch on that a little more, because and I know you say you're biased about that because that's your favorite part of the program, but that's very important, man, because we have to teach our young men how to react differently. You know what I mean? In situations, and it's not about reacting, it's about responding. You know what I mean? So go a little deeper into that, like, because it's definitely a psychology. I definitely think that, and I'm glad you mentioned that about rewriting the narrative. I think, man, this conversation is so pertinent, and it has to continue, especially at this time as things are starting to kind of unravel at the seams. Now we have the opportunity to really I almost dropped my notepad here. We really have the opportunity now, man, to take advantage of the openings, so to speak, and really get to our youth and really start preparing the next generation, because, in 23, 24 years, they're going to be no longer the minority in the country. So what are we going to do? You know what I mean? So how are we going to take care of ourselves? So go a little deeper into the reasoning of even going into worrying about their mental health, their physical health, their breathing, making sure how they stay in a certain mind state, in a certain mind frame in any situation. Like, go into how the purpose for that.
Oh boy. Well, brother, I can have a seminar
as succinctly as possible.
Yeah, so let's try to condense this down very quickly.
Yeah.
Let's just say this, that when you are mindful and you are present, you are at that moment in full control of your actions, and you are not reacting, and this world is not happening to you, but this world is happening for you. A lot of times when we are dealing with trauma, especially, our mindset is crafted in such a way where it's meant to protect us. Many times our mind and our daily functions are an autopilot in order to protect us from harm. It's a defense mechanism. So what's happening is your mind is constantly going through processes that are exploring past events, traumatic experiences, to make sure that you don't repeat those experiences. So you're constantly worrying about what happened.
Right.
At the same time, your mind is also predicting the future events and causing anxiety of you worrying about what may occur, right? So either you're thinking about what happened 5 hours ago, or you're thinking about what may happen 5 hours from now. Or worst case scenario, you're thinking about something that happened 5 years ago, or you're thinking about what's going to happen 5 years ago. But meanwhile, you're not here right now at this moment. And the only thing that should happen that controls your focus, that you are mindful of, is this moment right now. And the moment you are present, you're in full control. Now, the way you get into full control is by learning how to master yourself, learning how to master your breathing, and to be intentional with the things you do. And this is what Qigong, yoga, and Tai Chi allow us to center ourselves so that we're almost always walking in a meditative state, so that we're always in control of how we respond to a situation. Just because a stimuli or a stimulus occurs doesn't mean we have to respond in a traditional way.
Absolutely.
It can happen.
Right.
Let me go through my Rolodex of options on how I can handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move and attack you.
Right.
Or I could go, like, you know what? I could play chess, which is another thing we do in the program, by the way. We play chess heavily.
Nice.
So that we can say, if I do this, then that will happen. And if that will occur, then this will happen. And then, okay, I start looking at several different options and following them down to their conclusion. And now I can make the best decision in an instant.
That takes such a level of patience. You know what I mean? Like, you're actually, I can see, because you have to be, and I've practiced this, where you're present, but you're observing everything around you and in a completely still state.
Yeah, sure.
It takes an extreme amount of patience to not react. And where did I learn that? Marriage. Because the slightest thing, no matter what I'm going through in my mind, you know, she may not know what's happening with me. And a question she's asked me 1,000 times may set me off just one particular day. But I realize that I have to slow down and be patient in the moment. When I'm dealing with her, it's in the moment.
Yeah.
Because no matter what I'm going through, she's a woman. So I can't, you know, react in a certain way. So I immediately, you know what I'm saying, shut that.
Right.
And it takes going through that back and forth to even get there. So I could see teaching the young men to be able to slow it down right at that moment. You know, somebody's getting in your face and they want to get wild with you. How do you slow down right at that moment?
So what I would say to that point, brother, and I'm only going to give tips to try to make things better, right? So eventually, inevitably, the goal is that whole monk life mentality, right? The goal is to get away from expectations, where it's not this dam or wall that you can put up where you have mastered patience, where you're not allowing it to impact you because of a wall, but rather it passes through you because it doesn't bother you whatsoever.
Yes.
So it's not a patience, because patience will infer that there's a level that is right. Like you're pouring into a cup, and eventually there will be a breaking point, right? Eventually there will be a tipping over because it's going somewhere.
Right.
Nah, there should be never any offense, because at the end of the day, you need to realize that there's no expectations on another human being, and allow someone the space to be who they need to be.
Right.
And there is when there really is truly no judgment and no expectations, you're able to be on a 30,000-foot level and everything is happening beneath you. And you choose what you respond to without it impacting you or feeling like you have to, how am I going to handle this? Nah, like nothing bothers me. Unless I choose to, sometimes,
it gets there. And I love to be in that state, man, where, and I guess I described it as patience, but I let it burn because you have to let it go through you. I think one of my teachers taught me is sometimes when you're in that situation, he described it as objectivity. When you're able to separate yourself from the exact situation. So you literally step back used from yourself. So you're watching yourself in that particular moment. And that's what stops me. And that's what I described as patience, because I'm not reacting. I'm stepping back.
Exactly.
Now back up, and I'm watching myself watch it because first of all, I'm filtering whatever I'm going through to make sure I don't react in a way that she doesn't deserve. You know, any kind of anything but a smile on my face.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I mean, I feel you.
So I let those emotions burn through me, even if she say something crazy. I just let it burn, just like Usher song, "Let It Burn."
Well, I would say words matter. Words matter. So yeah, so we want to change the language of burn, right? And
let it burn. That's how I describe it. Because
I know, but burn, right, has a
it's a pure thing for me.
We're going to embrace it because what we want to do is tell yourself that whatever we are feeling is a reflection of what's going on internally. Your whole existence, this entire universe is playing out, all starts from within. Right? It's you can look at any situation positively or negatively. You are in control. You decide if something is burning. You decide whether something is healing. You decide whether something is positive. You decide how you characterize it. If you say this is educational, it will be educational. If you say this is something that I don't want, but I will withstand, then it's something that will eventually have a breaking point. Words matter. Words matter. I love you, brother. So I just wanted to.
Oh no, that's dope. No,
you know what I'm saying? Like but these are the lessons that I'm teaching these young men now. Now, so that by the time they get into adolescence, young adulthood, manhood, these seeds would be planted, and they're able to be in control of the joystick. That way, they're not reacting, on this reactionary type of thing, and then trying to play catch up from there. That no, they realize that and you want to start becoming sensitive to the wave of emotions in your body. The moment you get an emotional reaction, you need to immediately be on the radar of asking why, not how dare this occur, but more, what's going on internally with me that this even bothers me?
Right.
What is it that's being said or done? Why is that a trigger for me? It has to be all internal. All internal. Has to be 100%. And when you do that, and when you keep that discipline, that it's all 100% internal, then you take ownership. When you tell yourself you can, you can. When you tell yourself you cannot, you cannot. That's what it means about a God body. That's a whole 5% of cause and effect. You say that you a God, guess what, fam? You a God. You say that I have control over something, guess what? You have control over it. The moment you doubt that you can't, it's a wrap. Society and this world will run over you, right? So the first battlefront is the body. The second battlefront is the mind. The third battlefront is this world around us, in that order.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, hey, I could take correction. Ain't nothing for me. But so how do the young men respond to that? How do they do that? How do they respond even in that situation? How do they respond to that type of teaching, really?
Well, brother, to be honest with you, when we are doing this type of training with minds that are this early, it's more akin to having a fresh pot of soil, right? And imagine yourself if you're a gardener, right? Brother Tramikas is out there with his raised boxes, gardening and getting his stuff in. And my wife, she does farming. When you plant a seed, you can't sit there and watch the seed and overwater it and like put it in the sun and then put fertilizer on it and mess with it every day, all day. Because if anything, you'll wind up spoiling the seed. The best thing you could do is plant as many seeds and create the conditions where that soil is right so it can take root and yield fruit eventually. So we are planting seeds in these young men. Some get it instantaneously. Many are like, okay, we're going to go through the motions. All right, Brother James, let me do the breathing with you, right? Let me see what this is like, and they're learning, they hear it. They're understanding it. We're having the lectures. We're telling them that they can. We tell them they can. We tell them this is possible. We tell them this is possible. But brother, this is a life journey. They're going to have another voice another role model, another person that's inspirational say the same thing. And then for them to watch a movie or listen to a song that is kind of saying the same thing, and then them come across a book one day, maybe while they're in high school or in college, and we're like, yo, Brother James was talking about this. And then, right, it's all these different fragments that lead to this huge tapestry of a picture where they have an aha moment. And sometimes on a subconscious level, they are operating with the tools that they've been given without knowing exactly where they got it from, but they have that as an option. You see, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to make a rose out of concrete. I'm not really trying to make sure that each individual one grows per se, but I'm throwing as many seeds out there in as many minds, and then hoping that the conditions with the community that we're developing together as a village are going to, as a whole, nudge this young man in the right direction.
That's the goal, right? That's the goal. That's for the future generation.
Exactly.
So I also wanted to talk about your martial arts.
Yes.
Are you teaching the young men the martial arts as well, right?
Absolutely. Self-defense is a cornerstone. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So going into that, man, the importance of that, teaching the young men the self-defense and what it is to take care of self and community. How are they responding to that? But first explain that, and then how are they responding to that?
Well, I would say, for a disclaimer, self-defense is something that is critical for all of our people. Women, men, equally. There will be an argument that our sisters probably would benefit from self-defense training more so than our brothers. But let's just say it's equal, and the necessity to learn how to defend yourself, let alone from the confidence you get when you're able to comfortably go into a situation or environment without worrying about your safety or concern. I don't even necessarily think that that's too much of an issue for our people, because we are naturally confident, right, and we naturally have that attitude, I wish a person would, right? So I don't think that's the issue as much as some people think that they're able to protect themselves in that scenario, and then they have a rude awakening when it really truly occurs. I had seminars earlier this year in February where we were talking about the rise of abduction with Black women in particular, not only in this state, but in the nation, that there is a sex trade economy going on right now where they're snatching up sisters, not to mention there's reports that we're being harvested for melanin. There's a lot of different things that's going on where young people are being snatched up, and you have to know how to defend yourself against multiple assailants. It's critical. So I'll say that's for everybody. Now, as far as the impact for our young men, we are teaching these young men to be warriors for the village. And we are teaching that they all have a responsibility to protect their household and those who are unable to protect themselves. Each one teach one, each one protect one. So learning how to take care of themselves is the first goal before they're able to learn how to defend others, right? But, the self-defense is 90% holistic and 10% combat training. And I say combat training because I don't teach self-defense, brother. So like our system is not, oh, I'm gonna wait for you to swing on me before I'm able to do my counter move. Nah, that's not what we do, brother. Right. No, I teach you how to move.
No dancing in the ring, right? No,
right.
No stuff. Okay.
Depending on the situation, you may need to move first. Right. If you see somebody like, mollywopping your sister, you're not gonna like, hey, mister, I need you to swing on me first before I can do this technique that Brother James taught me. Nah, brother, I don't teach self-defense, I teach combat. And these young men are learning combat. And even with Sister Fatima, she had the blueprint for womanhood, and I taught her young women and the art of the staff. So we did bow training. That way, if they are nearby anything, they can pick it up and make sure they leave a mark.
They can do that.
Right. So as far as the art that I teach specifically, growing up, Growing up in Atlanta, my father put me into martial arts. So I did Mudo Kwon Tong Sudo, which is the cousin of Taekwondo. I went into the Marine Corps. I boxed for the Marine Corps for several years. I did Sulsa training, which is a derivative of what's called Hwarangdo, Hwarangdo. When I got out the service, I trained at Hwarangdo for several years. Then I did jujitsu, and then I boxed for Rodriguez Boxing Club. Couldn't really find a, I was constantly searching for what was the next best thing. I dabbled in judo, and then I found my beautiful wife, right? And her father, my father-in-law, he passed away last year, but close to 17, 18 years ago, he made sure that I was able to protect his daughter, and he put me into the Kung Fu training, which completely opened my mind, where I learned Northern and Southern Gong Chi, which is rooted in Kung Tao and Silat, Indonesian Silat. Yeah. So this art completely opened my mind, and I realized that everything that I had learned before wasn't a complete waste of time, but I learned that I had to unlearn a lot of the mistakes that I was doing. And the beauty about it is that it allows my brain to unlock and to be able to apply that in business, apply that in the corporate space, apply that in my interactions with the mentorship, with the LOC. Everything I do is with the elasticity that I've learned from martial arts of being able to handle things up high and down low at the same time. So I'm able to multitask and juggle things a lot better than some of my peers may be able to. So martial arts has a lot of healing and practical applications that go beyond just the hand-to-hand combat, right? It's a way of life. Right. It's a way of healing yourself. It's a way of being in control of the situation, and it empowers you to be able to protect those around you.
The Eastern arts, I like to call it.
Well,
those are the from the East, right?
And where did the East get it from? Who gave it to the East?
Oh, well, from Africa.
But exactly.
Right. I like how okay, so I should have started there. So we all know it comes from Africa. We know it comes from Africa. So different names and these different styles evolved over a certain amount of time, right? So they traveled with us into those regions and into the East, into Asia, 5,000 to 7,000 years of that, culture, China alone. Not just to talk about the Southeast.
Absolutely.
I mean, so.
And when you, so keep this in mind. Have you ever noticed how you can see different videos of brothers and sisters in Africa at the root when they're dancing, right? They doing their different dance moves, right? And then you say, hold up, that looks like some dance moves that I'll be seeing in the club sometimes, right? On how on a cellular level, we move a certain way no matter where we are, right?
Yes, sir.
That we have it in our DNA to move at a particular drum beat, at a particular rhythm timing, right? And how we are loose and fluid. We're not stiff people, generally speaking, right? So when we talk about these martial arts systems, the goal is for them to be fluid, like a dance. Fluid where we can move with rhythm. And when we're attacking, we're doing with drum beats and frequency. You see, we put stank on our movements, which is why when you see Taekwondo artists, they look like
they're real stiff, right?
Because that's how they process it. Right. So if I was to teach you dance moves and say, okay, brother, I'm gonna teach you this dance move that you're gonna use in the club, I could teach other people and they're gonna do it very stiff. Can they dance? Maybe, but they can't dance like the way we can dance if I show you the same dance move. So, brother, when I teach you the movements, I don't expect you to be, I expect you to put your own stank on it. You feel me?
Yes, sir.
All right, so this is ours. It came from us. Never forget that. Martial arts is a rhythmic dancing thing from the heart, from divinity. It's not something you're supposed to think about. When you go into the club, are you thinking about what dance moves you're gonna put on the floor?
You just do your thing.
When you ask a chick, say, hey, yo, let's go dance real quick, are you thinking like, man, I got to make sure that I step here and I step here, and Brother James said I got to turn my hips? You're not thinking. You feel the beat, you enjoy the moment, you figure out, okay, what your partner's doing, you feel that energy, and you enjoy it, and you move. That's what martial arts is about, is enjoying the moment in that space, and you move. Whatever your partner wants to do, you do. You know, however you want to dance, let's dance.
So it's a dance. It's a
right. It's a divine thing that Black people have a particular blessing. And the crazy cold part about it is a lot of Black people look at martial arts kind of funny, like, that's some.
And that's where I wanted to get to. That's why I'm being this way, because I'm like, I want you to get to that part where the stigma of like, oh man, that's why we got to do that, you know?
Right.
And then so I'm thinking you would have to actually take them to that and say, no.
Exactly. Like, this is us, man. This is us.
Us, and let me show you exactly how, and then I'll put you on this mat. But first, let me show you how. I mean, so you got to go through all of that, man. And what came to mind was I knew a guy from Brazil. He was from a little town called Recife, which is right outside of Bahia.
Okay.
And you know, he looked, you know, just like a lot of them do over there, where they're not, you know, they don't have the full features, you know, at least in that part of the town he was in. But man, this dude was about 5'3", 5'4", man, and he was an absolute master at what was that? Capoeira.
Capoeira, yes.
Oh, capoeira. And the moves he used to do for us, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, he still spoke Portuguese. He was literally like he got dropped off the boat, though he been in the country at that time, like 10 years. But, you know.
Right. He and I'm pretty sure that he performed the Jenga. He performed the Jenga for you.
Yes.
Where he turned, right?
Yes, he used to do that first.
Right. But he had swag with it, right?
Oh, all day. We loved him, man.
So that's my point. It don't matter what the system is. What matters is that when we do it, we have a particular stank on the beat, right? We have a rhythm that we flow with. And if we looked at it like, oh, well, James is going to put us through some dance routines that can protect us, then we won't look at it funky like it's some type of Taekwondo tournament, because that's not what this is, right? Which is, once we learn how to maximize it, we learn how to control the breath and relaxation. When we learn the breath and relaxation, we can use that in the workplace when you have coworkers or a boss that's driving you nuts, right? When you're on the bus and you have a person that is putting you on that level, once you center yourself in breath and relaxation, then it's all good. Then things flow through you, as opposed to you putting up a wall saying, one more again, I'm putting up this wall. I'm gonna put up this wall. You need to stop. You need to stop. I'm trying to have patience. Eventually, there will be a crack. And when people realize that you have a wall and they meet resistance, they're able to apply resistance against it. In our system, if someone strikes, I'm not putting resistance on you. I'm flowing like water. You see? That way you don't feel the block. You should be directed by the block, not fought with the block. Water. Everything's all good, brother.
Right. Ain't that what he showed him in the remake of the Will Smith's son when he did?
The Karate Kid, the new one. Yeah,
took him up to the mountain and he was teaching them about water and that bowl. Okay,
that's what all this is about. Like they were dropping nuggets.
Right. So
all this, and we are learning kung fu. This is what we're learning. This is kung fu. But the brothers, we call it gong fu. It's gong chi. All right, like all the masters, the brothers. You know, for the most part.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go into that, man. We're gonna have to have a whole nother show on that, man. Because I think even getting to that point, man, we have to tap in on all levels right now, man. So we tap in economically, we tap in, you know what I'm saying? We tap in agriculturally, we gotta tap in spiritually, we gotta tap in every way we can and get back to every part of who we are. You know what I mean? And spirituality is what they took from us first.
Right.
That's the first thing they took. I mean,
Absolutely.
they took our God. They took that from us. So I believe, man, this is the time where we are reclaiming that, brother. We are reclaiming that in full force. And I believe this conversation is happening globally. You know what I mean? Now, everybody's waking up. So with this type of activity that we're doing right now, this discussion, I'm talking about with the LOC, it's happening globally. You know what I mean? And so it's only a matter of time, man, before we all kind of just meet up.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Where next thing you know, 5 years from now, we all looking at each other and it's like,
well, what it is, brother, what it is, and to your point, yes, it's like an anthill being scratched, and all of us are scrambling to the top, seeing the world for what it is. I'm like, yo, we're scratching us. We need to rebuild this thing. I would say that this scrambling of trying to rebuild occurs in cycles where we have had it and we say enough is enough. And then our oppressors say, okay, we were doing too much. Let's make them happy. And then they rock us to sleep and they put us in the same position where the following subsequent generations forget and we're right back to square one. Right. So this is something that occurs once every generation, right? It happens all the time where atrocities get to the point where they burn our stuff down, whether it be Tulsa, Rosewood, like these things occur all the time when we say enough is enough. We want justice and we demand it. And they say, okay, fine. And then we go right back to the set point. So I would say what I'm inspired by right now with organizations like the Phoenix LOC is that the foundation and structure is such that once we build it up, we have mechanisms in place to make sure it doesn't just come tumbling down, because that's what normally happens. The ants build up their mountain again, and then they come down and they swipe it, and then now we have to scramble around to try to build up our ant mound again. And we're constantly trying to rebuild our ant mound. What we need to do is find the organizational discipline, like Brother Tramika says all the time. Yeah. That way, no matter what occurs, it continues to live and breathe, whether we are doing the work or not.
And on that note, that organizational discipline, my brother, that is key. I'm glad you brought that up, man. I gotta wind the show up. Man, we going well over time. This is something that, man, I believe was absolutely timely. And this wasn't even a direction I was trying to go in. I was trying to just make most of the show about your martial arts and really getting into some of that, explaining for the community. And we touched on it a little bit, but the spirit guided us, in a whole nother direction. So that's I feel blessed for that, man. I really appreciate your time, Brother James. Let the people know where they can find you. Let the brothers know how they can get involved in the organization. If there's a website, if there's a link or something they can go to, please let the community know.
Yeah, so it is not necessary for me to plug myself whatsoever. What I need assistance from the entire community is supporting the Fight for Life, No Excuses mentorship as we are seeking to expand our program to impact more young men, more young warriors. And right now we have a fundraiser, bike-a-thon that we're doing that's launching on September 9th. But right now we are raising money for this bike-a-thon to be a success. We are attempting to raise $100,000 by the end of September. And the website to be a part, to support this is miles4sons.com. That's miles4sons.com.
One more time.
Miles, 4, sons.com.
Got it.
We have a GoFundMe page. We have everything articulated exactly what we're going to use the funds for, and how it would impact these young men. You can go in there and see the different works we've done with them over the years. So you can see exactly what we're doing in the community. The actual website is Fight for Life, No Excuses.org. We are a nonprofit 501c3 company. So if you're a business or if you know of a business, please pass on the word, because obviously they can write it off on their taxes. We have a commitment from a company that we're going to announce pretty soon We can't really say it yet, but we are about to receive $20,000 from a well-known corporation.
Nice. Nice.
Blessings. We have raised close to $4,000 so far. So we are well on our way, and us achieving that $100,000 as a goal to impact these young men is not far-fetched, and there is momentum, and there's a lot of support, and we thank all the people who have contributed so far. Peace and blessings. But I definitely want to tap into the network and strength of the Phoenix LOC to help support this cause and put the word out. If you know businesses, if you have a little bit of time and effort where you can look at it yourself and share it, I appreciate you, but I don't need to plug myself. If y'all want training from me, you need to hit up Brother Michael and Brother Tremikas with the Ministry of Defense,
right.
And we can learn these dance moves.
Man, oh man. Hey, thank you very much for your time, Brother James. I really appreciate you coming on the Waking Giant podcast show. Brothers and sisters, I will put those web sites and links in the chat when I post the episode. So you'll have it, man. And let's step up as a community. Let's step up as a nation. And that's something that that's how we have to start thinking, family. We have to start thinking as a nation. All right. Once we start thinking as a nation, all else, man, it's a wrap. That's the best way I can explain it. All right, family. Thank you very much for tuning in again. Brother James, thank you very much for your time and imparting some of your wisdom. We will do another episode because we will go deep. All right. And I really appreciate your time, man. Thanks again, family. Have a great night. And tune in for the next episode of The Waking Giant. I'm Brother Jay. You have a great evening.
Peace.